This is Fort King National Historic Landmark. It was originally built in about 1828, and nowadays this is a replica. We're going to go inside and examine the fort and its history in regards to the Second Seminole War. So come join us.
Fort King was established in present-day Ocala, Florida. It was named for the U.S. Army Colonel William King, commander of the U.S. 4th Infantry Regiment, and who served as military governor of West Florida from May 1818 to February 1819. Today, a replica of the Fort King stands on its original site. Fort King was built to protect frontier settlers during a time of tension with the Seminole Indians, following the signing of the Treaty of Moultrie Creek in 1823. Fort King was connected to Fort Brooke on Tampa Bay, in present-day Tampa, by a military road. Fort King, however, fell into disuse after 1829 due to budget cuts and remained empty for 3 years. After the Treaty of Payne's Landing in May 1832, in which certain Seminole leaders relinquished all claims to land in the territory of Florida, Fort King was reactivated as a base for the removal of Seminoles to Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. In October 1834, Brigadier General Wiley Thompson brought Seminole chiefs to Fort King to discuss their removal to Indian Territory. But the chiefs stated that they did not feel bound to the Treaty of Payne's Landing because some chiefs had not signed it, and those that did had been forced to. Therefore, the Seminole chiefs refused to be removed from Florida. Brigadier General Wiley Thompson responded by requesting reinforcements from the U.S. government, forbidding the sale of guns and ammunition to the Seminoles, and actually removing some chiefs from their positions. In March 1835, Brigadier General Wiley Thompson called the Seminole chiefs together again to read a letter from President Andrew Jackson, which stated, "Should you refuse to move, I have then directed the commanding officer to remove you by force." Some of the Seminole chiefs relented and agreed to move, but they asked that their removal be delayed until the end of the year, which was approved. At the end of 1835, the standoff between the Seminoles and the U.S. government became violent. Seminoles in opposition to removal ambushed a U.S. Army column under the command of Major Francis Dade, which had been sent from Fort Brooke to reinforce Fort King, on December 28, 1835, killing nearly entire 108-man column. On the same day, December 28, 1835, Seminole warriors led by Osceola assassinated U.S. Indian agent Brigadier General Wiley Thompson, who had been appointed in 1834 to oversee the removal of the Seminoles from Florida. Thompson was shot 14 times and scalped. 4 of his companions were also killed. These coordinated attacks, including the Dade Massacre and the assassination of Wiley Thompson, were the beginning of the Second Seminole War, which was fought for 7 long years, from 1835 to 1842. The Seminoles raided plantations in January 1836, forcing the U.S. Army to abandon Fort King in May 1836 and move to Fort Drane further north. The Seminoles burned Fort King in July 1836. Captain Thomas Childs of the 3rd U.S. Artillery Regiment, with 136 men, returned and rebuilt Fort King in April 1837. Fort King served as a military headquarters for the remaining of the Second Seminole War, then was abandoned in May 1843, a year after the end of the war. Fort King served as Marion County's first courthouse until 1846, when it was dismantled for its lumber. This present structure is a replica that was built in 2017.
And we're gonna climb this to the second level. Take a look at the second stockade.
The 1823 Treaty of Moultrie Creek placed the Seminoles on an interior reservation. 1832 Treaty of Payne's Landing called for the Seminoles to be moved west to Indian Territory. This is a detailed eyewitness account of the Dade Massacre on December 28, 1835. This is a graphic account of the attack on Wiley Thompson, which is way too gruesome for me to tell. The Seminole War. It's actually 3 separate wars fought over a couple of decades. The First Seminole War was fought between 1816 and 1818, while Florida still belonged to Spain. Second Seminole War fought 1835 to 1842, and the Third Seminole War fought 1855 to 1858. It was a hard life serving as a soldier at Fort King. The U.S. Army on the frontier. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Fort King played a key role in the history of Florida and of Marion County. A Tale of Two Forts discusses the burning of the first Fort King by the Seminoles and its rebuilding a year later.
So this is the blacksmith shop located outside the fort. Since a lot of high temperatures and a wooden stockade would not be a good idea. This monument was dedicated to Fort King as a National Historic Landmark in 2004. It's an example of a chickie, the Seminole word for house.
This cannon is a replica that was actually on display at the Silver Springs Park for many years.
This is the Fort King National Historic Landmark Visitor Center. Fort King Road led from Fort Brooke in modern-day Tampa to Fort King in Ocala. So if you enjoyed this trip to Fort King National Historic Landmark, please click like, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you on our next adventure.